Hello. We're here with Bryan Gunawan. We're going to talk about self-branding and networking. Hello. How are you?
Hi. Hi, Millsya. I'm doing good. How are you? Very excited to
Good.
be
All
here.
good. Yep. Yep. Me too. So, tell us about you. You're the star here. You're the talk show star.
Okay. Sure. Let's see. What do you want to know first? Let's
Okay.
dig in.
Okay. I'm just gonna dig in. So, what are the keys behind personal branding and the importance of it?
All right.
Let's just start with that.
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of people tuning in today wanting to know more about a little bit more about self-branding, communication, networking, right? Maybe when we're talking about personal branding, I think maybe it's important to start with a little story, right? There's a lot of people who have been wanting to know how it came about when we talk about personal branding. Let's talk about maybe it's important, like for example, Milsha, like imagine one person that you can remember so much, or you're such a huge fan of the person. Tell me any names that
Does
come
she have
up
to
to
be
your mind.
famous or famous
Somebody
person?
famous or somebody not so famous, it's fine, whichever.
Damn, so many.
Pick
They've got
one.
to be a Hollywood celebrity, so I'm gonna
Sure.
choose
Yeah.
Jennifer Lopez.
Jennifer Lopez, sure.
Yep,
Everybody, yeah, a huge
yep.
fan as well here. So let's say what's with J Lo? What do you think was so amazing about J Lo?
Um, she's just really versatile. Like she dances,
Mm,
she sings, she acts, and
yes.
even doing one thing is really hard. And
Yep.
yeah, it's
So
really
she's
hard.
just really versatile. You're talking about her dances. You're talking about
Yep.
maybe also her interviews, right? How she is such a multi-talented talent, and she's like amazing, right? Acting here and there, singing here and there, dancing, etc. But that's the thing. So you asked me a simple question about what's the keys behind personal branding. What's so important about it, right? And I think. When we talk about personal branding, is that it is first of all, I think we all can agree that personal branding is very important because everybody can be, let's say there's numerous actors, there's so many actors, so many actresses, right? um, what's happening is that here there's so many good actors and so many good actresses, but different actors, different actresses sometimes result in very different image, correct?
Correct.
So Jennifer Lopez, for example, sticks in your mind, and that's most likely is because of the personal branding that Jennifer Lopez has. Does that make sense? Like because
Yep.
like for
Yep.
example, like the way J Lo dances, the way J Lo sings, the way J Lo speaks is different, and this is why personal branding is very very important because that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us different.
Yep.
Even though let's say you and what do you do right now? Let's say you. What do you do right now?
I mean,
You're
besides studying, or
yeah. What would you study, for example?
I'm an entertainment management major.
Okay, entertainment
Yep.
management. So
Yep.
obviously,
And
there's more than
I
one.
sorry, pardon.
There's more than one. There's more than one students in entertainment management, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. So what would you say makes you different from the others?
Well, most of the entertainment management students they don't perform, and I
Mm-hmm.
perform at the site, so I think that's
That's
yeah.
one of it. So you're an
Yep.
entertainment. Let's say you could be an entertainment manager who actually understands how to entertain because you do a little bit of a performance gigs on the side. So you don't just manage; you actually understand
Yep.
how things work, right? And it's
Yep.
very important because personal branding determines how unique we are and how different we can be, and therefore adds up selling points to a lot of people, right?
Yep. Yes.
And that gives more value to you. That's why there are products, for example, why some products are more, for example, coffee. There's so many coffee in the world, but why, for example, Starbucks ring a
Starbucks.
bell, like so different, for example, so famous in the world, there's a difference, right? And
Yep.
that's
Yep.
the reason why branding, that's the effect of branding in itself. Now we're talking about branding, it gives you a certain stamps on how good or how different you are, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it very important, you know. And we talk about the
Yep.
keys behind personal branding. I think it's important to sort of identify what's really unique when we talk about elements of branding. For example, the first thing you mentioned about J-Lo, or about J-Lo is like, for example, the way J-Lo sings, the way J-Lo dances means number one is obviously one of it is the way somebody appears. Appearance is one of it, right? That's one of the
Yeah.
key. That's what I'm saying.
Packaging. The packaging is
The
important. Yeah.
packaging is like
Okay. Yeah.
full blown, right?
Yeah. Agreed.
You're such a great fan of JLo, right? So
Hmm.
when we talk about JLo's appearances, that's one of it, right?
Yeah.
Somebody can be a very good lawyer with a different appearance, and somebody can be also a different skilled lawyer with a different appearance, right?
Yep.
For example, if you talk about Indonesia, there's so many lawyers in Indonesia, but
Oh yeah.
one of the many lawyers make it to the
Are you gonna talk
television.
about Hotman Paris?
Yes,
Or,
I mean
never mind.
it's a very simple but
It's
powerful
so
example, right?
controversial though. Like he
Yes, but
acted out so many times. It's like,
I completely agree. But that's
yeah, he's
personal.
rude,
Yeah,
but he's brilliant. I agree.
when we're talking
Yep.
about personal branding, it's not about right or wrong, right? It's about what makes you different, and the way Hotman Paris appears, addresses himself. That's appearance number one. But personal branding isn't just about appearance. You mentioned about skills as well. For example, you are an entertainment manager who also understands how to do entertainment gigs, right? And
Yep.
so the second one is skills.
Mm.
So it's not just about appearance. There's a lot of people who are appearing so well dressed and everything. But at the end of the day, the skills that you're having also makes you different, right? So I think it's important to understand personal branding and imagine as if personal branding is like sort of layers of onions, right? The first
Mm-hmm.
one you open, peel an onion, then you look at the appearance, and then you like peel. That's the first one. The skin is like the appearance. Oh, you like the
Yep.
onion? It's like okay, it smells good, for example. And then as you peel, there's probably some onions by essence inside is not so great, right? Maybe too ripe already,
Mm-hmm.
and then just becomes sting, you know. And so the skills at the second one actually matter. That's what makes it very different than the rest as
Yeah.
well. And the third key, I think, what I truly believe is achievements, the results of it, right? That's what
Yep.
makes people becomes credible, become reputable, right? Like for example, when we're talking about JLo, JLo obviously has a lot of achievements, right? Especially music and dancing, music mostly, and that's what makes JLo so different when it comes to her achievements as well, right? So if you ask me, when we as we talk about personal branding, and a lot of
Yep.
people here are sometimes wondering what does it actually mean to be able to brand yourself and why it's so important. It's
Yep.
at the end of the day, it is about you and your difference, how you are unique among the rest. And the three keys are the following: it's the appearance, the skills, and eventually it's also about the achievements that the person is bringing to the table. But
Yep.
I want to highlight one thing here, is that what was really particularly different is that everyone has a different story. Does that make sense? Do you
Yep.
remember, like, for example, like if we watch about idol shows, right? Got talent shows.
Yep.
If you notice, there could be, let's say idols. If you notice, there are two singers in the finale. Both are equally good, or maybe even one is slightly less or slightly more than the others.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, the one who wins the public voting is the one with the most unique story, whatever that means, right?
Yep.
Somebody with zero to hero story, somebody with such a young age kind of story, such a great singer kind of, if that makes
Agree.
sense.
Yep.
And this it means that personal branding is a lot driven by stories as well.
Yep. Yep.
Does that make sense? Like because let's hear your story, for example, right?
Oh.
So you're yeah,
Yep.
let's dig
Yep.
in, right? Why are you so much interested in doing entertainment management?
Well, I'm not gonna do math, that's for sure, or science for MA, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, I just can't imagine being in another like industry. So yeah, I'm passionate about the entertainment industry, whether they're like the classical world or
Mm,
the contemporary world. I love like musical theaters. Like, I grew up watching the Western, all music, movies, and
okay.
all that, and just
Okay.
fell in love, fascinated. Yeah, I can't
Let's
imagine
dig
doing
in
anything
deeper.
else.
Let's dig
Even
in
if I
deeper.
want to
What?
be an
Mhm.
accountant, I want to be like an accountant in the entertainment industry. Yeah, you
I
know what I
see.
mean? Yeah.
But why? Let's dig in even more, right? Why do you like these industries so much? What was
Well,
inspiring? Maybe your mom before was an entertainer, or your
oh no,
father, or
oh no.
somebody from your background. Nope.
Dude, we're Chinese, Indonesian. Like we don't.
Mm. No, but that's
Okay.
what makes it unique. You see,
Pardon?
dig in more. Tell me more. Then I'll tell you a little bit about the story of personal branding that you can be
Oh,
doing. So you're
okay.
a Chinese Indonesian. Nobody in the family runs an entertainment industry, but you're very much interested. You watch all these movies before. Why?
Yep. Um, Creative, obviously.
Okay.
They're really eye-catching. I mean, no
Mm-hmm.
one else in the world can compete with, Disney, right?
Mm.
Pixar and all that. And
Mm.
yeah, I guess they're just really fascinating, and they give me like sort of hope that it can always be better, and
Yeah.
anything can always be better, and
Yeah.
they have like high like imaginations, right? Like their movies are like mind blowing. It's just like it's so inspiring. So I want
You
to be
see,
a part of that. Yeah.
that's where your stories come from, right? You're the first
Yep.
person in the family who actually runs into entertainment industry,
Yep.
and
You can say that.
right? And then
Yep. You can say
because
that.
before, nobody actually has it before, and it's a very different one because you've been going through all these different experience, and that's when you're looking at these entertainment. Disney inspired you. A lot of other entertainment forms inspire you, and that's part of the story. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And that story creates your personal branding. So a lot of people have been wondering, right? Like, should I dress properly? There's a lot of questions about that when you talk about personal branding. The whole idea sometimes is that the whole myth is sometimes that when it comes about branding, it's about dressing properly. It's about looking smart. It's about
Yep.
being smart. It's about highly achieving so you build a greater reputation, etc. But what I've been exploring in the last 10 years when I talk about these things, it's what's truly most important is that whether you actually have a unique story. And don't get me wrong, everybody has a unique story.
Yep. Great. Great.
Yep.
Yeah, but I do have like a really crucial question that me
Mm.
myself I'm wondering myself. So the thing is that you've got this amazing product or service. It could be yourself, it could be an actual tangible product, or it could be you, as an artist
Mm.
trying to promote yourself. You've got like the story, the USP, the unique selling point that you told me about,
Mm-hmm.
and but without a great marketing, right? You're not gonna make it work. That's what I really want to ask someone like you,
Mm.
because for example, like back in the day, like people can just throw money at advertisements,
Yep.
TV ad, and they will just blow up. But right now you can't do that anymore because no one pays attention to TV commercial. Like no
Mm.
one pays attention to like newspapers nowadays.
Yeah.
Like back then you can just put everything in there. Whether you're like what I mean, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's so broad. You can be a tech company, or you could be entertainer, or you could sell like medicines, but it just doesn't work anymore. So do you have any tips on
Sure. No. Yeah.
this?
I think your question makes great sense, right? Because when we're
Yep.
talking about personal branding, it's about communicating your story and your
Yep.
unique selling point to
Yep.
a set of audience, right?
Yep.
To a group of people, to put it very very simply. Now, when we're talking about these things, we're talking about it's a communication. So there's a communicator who is us who wants to communicate something, and there's the listener, the audience who are receiving the messages of our branding messages, right? And when we're talking about this, there's a channel in between, right? If it's, let's say, a public speaking, it's very straightforward. There's an audience in front of you, and then there's you standing at the front and then delivering a message. But when we're talking about personal branding, for example, like this one, right? For example, right now, if we are to make this into a structured conversation about personal branding, before you turn 25 is basically the channel. And specifically, it's IG Live right now. Instagram Live is the channel for both you and I to broadcast something, right? And a lot of people
Yep.
are doing it. As I was
Yep.
opening and preparing for this ISO, there's a couple of lives ongoing, right? People are basically these days people are fighting to get attention from the rest
Yep.
of the world, right?
Yep.
And I think that's the key word here: the channel to the right audience, right? So when we earlier in the first question, I think we were discussing about what kind of right communication that we should be delivering. But the second point is that we really need to try to understand what's the right channel for us to communicate these branding and these messages, right? You were right. You were mentioning a lot about that these days people don't watch TVs anymore. But I'd like to challenge a little bit on that notion, right? You probably don't watch TV, but somebody else might
Yeah,
actually
that's
watch TV,
I agree.
right?
Yep.
Somebody from a different generation, right? Does that mean like it's a wrong thing to advertise in TV? No, not exactly. It depends
Yep.
on what you want to promote, right? So, for example, if I want, like, let's say I'm like in my 30s right now, and if I want to appeal to, let's say, an audience of like 40, 50, maybe most of them actually don't really use Instagram, right? It's probably more relevant if I advertise or like brand myself in TV, put up something in TV, make a 3 seconds jingle bell video or something, and then
Yeah.
put it up on TV, and then people
Jingle.
would remember me as the guy who danced, right? Like
Yeah.
yesterday in Indonesia, I'm not sure if you grow up with this, but there's a little context. Like yesterday, there was a news revolving in Instagram that there was a lady who usually gives thumbs up in one of the national TVs. Usually like sometimes when people have this, how do you call it, the bumper. So there's this national TV. Usually when you watch TV, there's a bumper at the front, right, marking like between programs the transition. And then this lady who is very senior, and she just passed away yesterday, and it makes
Oh.
like one of the most national conversation. Like, oh my God, when we watch TV of this national channel, we used to see her putting up a thumbs up, and that's when it becomes relevant for a different generation. But right now, if we want to appeal for a younger audience, the millennials, Generation Z, they mostly use Instagrams. Texts don't even work as much anymore. Twitter is not exactly the best one, for example. Facebook is a different generation on its own. But Instagram Live is the one thing that keeps on prevailing, especially in tough times like this in COVID-19, where people are constantly seeking for content, right? And so my
Yep.
point being is that you were asking, but what's the right channel? What's the right channel and how do you actually build it? It's about the presence that you're making into the right channel. And it's not just online, right? There's also offline channels, for example. For example, as an entertainment manager, I can imagine you maybe needing to, let's say, maybe needing to appear and network with people, right?
Yep.
Because, for example, as an entertainment manager, the first one thing that I can imagine is that if you manage talents, is that A, you need to network with as many talents as possible.
Yep.
B, you need to network with as many production houses as possible if we're talking about actors or
Yep. Yep.
actresses. And it's not just about displaying yourself in Instagram and then say, hello, I'm an entertainment manager and here's my IG live. It's not just about that, right? It's also about having dinners and lunches with them, assuming that, COVID-19 isn't an issue. And then offline, right? Build those presence, and then get related with them and network with them. So there's offline and there's online. It's about communicating it to the right channel. And
Yep.
so therefore, it's about understanding what appeals to your audience at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Um. But I've noticed that nowadays, even the older people, they're on Facebook, right? So,
Mm.
do you think that, how do you balance online and offline presence?
Mm. I think that's a great question. I think
Because
when
like
you talk,
everywhere,
mm-hmm.
everyone is everywhere. So it's like, I don't know.
I completely agree. I think it's a lot of work, right? I think one thing before I answer that question, I think one thing that is probably helpful to remember is that when you're talking about online presence, exactly like you said, everything is everywhere. So
Yep.
therefore, when you're talking about online presence, typically people remember about what they experienced very briefly, but they don't fully conclude it. The level of the quality, the depth of the experience is different between online and offline. Does that make sense? I'll give you a
Yeah.
little parallel example, which probably appeals to a lot of younger people. Online dating. When we are doing online dating, most people, we interact in a very shallow level, right? You were
Yep.
chatting and everything. Probably we would know the person's age, we would know the person's favorite stuffs, but then it goes pretty much like that. And then probably you take it to the next level. You have a sort of like a phone calls, for example, right? You have a phone
Yep.
calls and then you get to know the person better. But what's truly different is the experience when you actually meet the person on cafes, right? For example, on restaurant, you have dinner, you have lunch, you were talking with the person, you were engaging with the person. That's offline presence in a way.
Yep. Yep.
You dig in and you have this level of quality of depth at the end of the day. But of course, the level of the time span needed for offline presence is way more. right? You need to spend more hours
Yeah.
talking to the person, then you'll get more interaction and more memory in that person. And so I think the key to the question is, how much do you need for your audience to appeal to you in terms of level of depth of interaction, right? If it's just basically in the marketing theory, there's the simplest framework is their AIDA, right? Awareness, interest, desire, and then action when you actually want to
Yes.
purchase something, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe most of the time when we're talking about online presence, it's meant to build the awareness,
Mhm.
right? Like, for example, right now, we are building an awareness of you. Those who are watching before you turn 25 is aware that you are a soon-to-be entertainment manager. Those, you're still studying there, right? And then you're going to get to that position. And then for me, people are, right now, people are aware, right? Those who already know me, then probably are aware that I am an HR practitioner, and then as well as a communication and leadership coach. But those who hasn't known me, then they pretty much know it as that. Oh, Bryan is an HR practitioner or a communication and leadership coach. That's it. But for the rest, usually when we're talking about interests, it digs deeper, right? People then would probably see your Instagram, my Instagram, and then probably interested. Or if we're talking about the branding of before you turn 25, looking at the Instagram of before you turn 25, and then getting interested, getting understanding a little bit more. And that's not exactly, and that's still online, but getting deeper, right? And so the question is this. When we're talking earlier in the second question, we were discussing about which channel to the right audience, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the second question, I said it's very important to understand what your audience needs at that moment.
Yep.
So let's say your aim is to let's say if I am a trainer, my aim is to actually get people who actually wants to subscribe to my training, right? And then so the goal is to build awareness through online channel, and then interest towards the profile, and then dig in towards offline, maybe meeting potential trainees, for example, right? And then that's where you take it offline. So it depends on which level your audience at the moment. Does that make sense? So you kind of have to have that mix a little bit, but be aware of where you are at that stage. It varies from people to people. So I have to say there's no right answer to that. But the one thing that needs to stay true is to understand where we are at that moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You said that you like there's no right answer, but personally, do you have like your own like formula to like deliver genuine networking? Like if you want to get,
Mm.
you want to get your
Yeah.
foot to the door. Like how do you do it?
I think if we're talking about, let's say, if are we talking about balance of online and offline, or are we talking about
Oh,
networking? That's
networking,
slightly different.
networking.
Networking. Now, if we're talking about the networking, it's I think it's very important to remember that first of all, it's very important to pick the right person to begin with. So imagine, I think we can always equate networking with the idea of like it's sort of a spider web. So if you shoot one spider web, and then it kind of develops to the rest, right? That work goes like that. Or if you've heard about referrals or first degree, second degree friends, those kind of terms. And those terms basically mean that there's always a connection towards everybody. So there's a theory that actually says two things. Number one, two theories. Number one is that the world is actually very much connected. The maximum degree of connection that most people actually have is 5 to 6 degree of connections. So after like 7 degree of connection, if you analyze the relations between somebody, at the end of the day, you might actually be connected, and it all goes back to you after 7 layers of friends, typically.
Oh.
That's usually the range of the maximum in every 6 to 7. And that means what? That means it's very important for us to understand which one or the second degree of friend that could bring us more. Because let's say if you're doing a professional networking, most of the time if you want to get to know somebody, you'll ask, right? Okay, who's the right person for me to know this person? Or if it's, let's say, the easiest one, dating, you like a particular person at your school, and then this particular person is like, you don't know the person at all, and then but you know the person is friends with A or B. So you would approach A so that you get introduced to that person. Does that make sense?
Oh,
It's the same. It's the same with networking. First of all, know who's the biggest quote unquote influencer or the key opinion leader who will be able to take you to that position, right? That's why you have terms like social climbing, because typically you would then
It's
try to
basically
get
that.
into.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically that, but maybe
Yeah.
don't be so obvious that people start to identify you, because the first one, as I said, is to build a relevant social climbing strategy and find the guy or the girl who will be able to bring you to that level of network, right? But this
Yep.
is where the second thing happens. The second thing is also about to be genuine, because most people who are labeled as negatively or stereotypically as social climbers, the way they network is so obvious. Like they just want
Mm-hmm.
to know the person, right? When they're gathering up there, when they're gathering in a group of like five or six, and then at the end of the day, what happens is that he or she is only paying attention to that one particular person. It's so obvious that the person just wants to approach the alpha of the group, for example, and that's
Yep.
that's a bad call, because at the end of the day, people are just people. No matter how famous somebody is, people are just people who wants to gather together. And if there's a new person in the group, then the alpha typically wants to know, or the alpha here means that the person that we want to get connected with just wants to know if we actually belong to the tribe, the group, or simply just want to do social climbing. So it's very important to be genuine to the rest
Yep.
of the group and actually wants to know, because at the end of the day, the quality matters a lot,
Yep.
to
Yep.
get that rapport, to get that good reputation, and therefore to build that network. Why is it very
Yep.
important? Because at the end of the day, going back to the idea of the spider web, then it goes word of mouth, right?
Yep. Yep. That's
Sometimes,
true.
even in this era of online marketing, we would still approach somebody, or sorry, we would still refer somebody or a product or a service, which is very good, regardless of whether it's we're getting paid to promote it or not. Does that make sense? Because we just like the product, we just believe in the product. They were like, this
Mm-hmm.
product is really good, you should try it, and that's word of mouth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people still do those things. The difference is news travel faster than before, right? We were like, that's why sometimes when you look at your post and then you see all those sharings, if you look at the post inside, there's like a section to it that says like if it's shared and sent to somebody else. And
Oh yeah. Yep.
typically,
Yep.
yeah, well, in Indonesian we call it super julit, right? And so
Sorry,
when
I
you're
don't.
doing that, you don't know that. Okay, super julit.
Yep.
Julit basically means like you're just bad mouthing someone.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then it's like you're just, oh, look at this person, this photo, like ugly
Yeah, but
photo or
those
something.
things spread fast. Like the
Exactly.
more.
So
Yep. Yep.
that's what I was talking, right? Now
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
happens when the level of the quality of the relationship or the level of the social climbing went really poorly,
Yep.
because
Yep.
basically we're literally just want to climb the social stairs to the point where it doesn't matter to build a genuine relationship. Now, if you ask me like what's very important about networking, whether you're somebody shy or whether you are somebody extrovert or introvert, or because I was looking at one of the questions earlier, and there's a question about how an introvert to do networking, and it just caught my attention for a bit. And I think it doesn't matter whether you're introvert or you're extrovert, because at the end of the day, it's really about building that quality relationship. So let's say you're in a group of five, right? But you're an introvert. You don't talk as much. You feel like you're close to one person only or two-person only, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's all about getting curious. You're introvert, extrovert, doesn't matter. If you're interested, you're interested. Then you'll be talking to some others, right? You'll still be building relationships with one or two people. Maybe not five, but maybe two or three. And that's okay, because it's about building the genuine relationship. It just takes a little longer time to be very deep. But let me tell you a little secret, because when you're talking about introverts, at the end of the day, typically relationships, connections with introverts tend to be deeper than the ones with the extrovert. Extroverts seem to have so many friends, but actually, like the level of the quality of the friendship is different.
Yep. Yep. They tend to be even more private. If you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
That's true.
but if you notice, like the introverts usually make the best conversations, right? Because it's so deep, it's so meaningful, and when it's so engaging, it is so engaging, right?
Yep. But do you think that social climbing is like the biggest mistake in like communication that people underestimate, or is there more?
In communication overall, no, I think social climbing is a valid strategy, right?
Okay.
To be perfectly rational and honest,
Well, yeah, I think as long as you did it with like dignity, you're okay with
that's
it.
one. Yeah, that's one, obviously, right? Because at the end of the day, people, first of all, people are generally very social creature, right? Humans, all of us are. So we kind of want to get validation. The only reason why people spend so much time social climbing most of the time is because they want to do validation, right? They want to feel acknowledged. Most people just wants to feel that they exist, you know. At the end of the day, like, why are we looking for love? Where are we looking for attention? Where are we looking for friendships? Where are we looking for all of those? Is that because we want to feel validated? We want to feel acknowledged that we do exist, that we're different, we're unique, we're outstanding than the rest, right? And it doesn't have to be super amazing. That's why, for example, a mother's love feels so genuine, because a mother's love is as simple as, I acknowledge you as my son or my daughter, and you're unique, and I accept you for who you are, right?
Yep, yep,
And
yep.
that is the underlying reason behind social climbing. But the term social climbing has underwent so much pressure and so much connotation to the point it becomes so negative. So if you ask me, like, is it really bad to be a social climber? No. But if you do it in the way that you really don't care about other people's feelings, other people's validation, that's where you're wrong. Because my example just now is only from one perspective, right? Now imagine there's two person, A or B. Like, for example, or me and you, this conversation, right? If I just went on talking and talking, and then all you're just giving me all this attention, just and then you'll make me feel good, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not paying attention at all to you. I'm not even,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just constantly cutting you off because I'm just so happy you're paying attention to me, etc. And then I don't really care about you. Will you feel that you matter in this conversation? No,
No.
right? And it doesn't matter whether you're somebody famous or not famous and everything. I won't get the validation that I will be getting from you. I'm
Yep,
forgetting
yep.
one thing, that it takes two to tango. If one
Yeah.
person wants to feel validated, the one thing that we need to always remember is the other person also wants to feel validated.
Yep, yep.
So, social climbing goes wrong not by theory or not by principle. It goes wrong when the communication is literally only about you. But when, or only about the other person. Why is social climbing so bad? Because you couldn't see the person, right? The person is the person really likes to just basically, the term in English would be like basically just kissing the ass. Sorry for the
Oh yeah,
French,
kiss
right?
ass. Yeah, yeah, kiss
Kiss
ass. Yeah.
ass, right? Like, for example, like you will be like, "Oh, Millsya, you're so good. Oh yeah, Millsya," and then I'll be laughing at every joke you're
So many
making.
people do that to me. I don't like it.
Exactly. And why?
Uh-huh.
If you
Yep.
notice, this is quite the difference, right? I pay attention to you a lot, right? I give you validation a lot, but that doesn't that's in your language. It leaves me with nothing. It doesn't give me the dignity, right? And eventually, people look at me, and I was like, Bryan, what are you doing? And then you're just, you're not even validating yourself. That's why it goes back to the simplest rule: the communication is about two to tango.
Yep.
It's the right way of social climbing. As a strategy, as a principle, it's fine. You want to know as many more people, right? Like, for
Yep.
example,
Yep.
you're a huge fan of somebody. You're meeting the person in a seminar. You're approaching the person, and then you're like, "I'm such a huge fan of yours. Can I actually get to know you more? Can I talk to you? I have a couple of questions. Can I do that?" Yes, but the moment you're like, "Oh yeah, you're so amazing. Oh, whatever you say, you're right." That's
Oh
when
yeah. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like
Yeah. That's
social
so
climbing to the
annoying.
point where it's just too much, right? But
Mm.
it needs to be two to tango. You pay attention to yourself and to others, and that's how you make it strategic and proper social
Yep.
climbing.
Yep. Yep. Proper social comedy. Yep. Oh my god, that's really good. Thank you. Okay. So going back to marketing, I do have
Hmm.
one that I've actually studied in class before. So there's this thing called like marketing oriented strategy and artistic oriented, right? So for what I'm wondering is that how do you decide for example, I do have
Mm-hmm.
a really good example. So you know Agnes Monica, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Amazing lady. Love her.
yeah, my aunt is a big fan of her. So she said that oh, you know, Agnes, she before she took off to the US, she took this Tolak Angin deal, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
commercial. And
Mm-hmm.
then my aunt said, you know, I think she needs money because she wants to go to the US, and I think she should do whatever, you know, she takes all of the deals that she could get to be able to afford USA. And the thing is
Uh,
that, you know what I mean, like it kind of hurts her brand. But then,
mm,
you know, how do you decide what deals to take? Like sometimes it's marketing oriented or artistic oriented. You
mm,
know, you get what I'm saying? It's like
yeah.
Agnes Monica, she doesn't take like Tolak Angin deals. It's like it's not relevant to your brand. You're a pop artist, you know. You don't
Yeah,
you
but I
don't
want
go on
to.
promoting
No,
like
I think that's a
fancy.
very valid question, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes because we're very obviously we're very aware that who we're friends with, who we're associated with, affects the way people see us, right? Like for so that's why you were giving examples of like Tola Angin deal isn't exactly the best branding for Agnes Monica. But I want to ask you the first question that I want to ask you following that question is that what do you think is Agnes Monica's brand?
Maybe if she do like a Nike campaign, it would have been better. I don't know.
An
A
international
Nike
brand.
or Adidas campaign, it would
Mm-hmm.
be
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
better.
Um,
Uh,
I'm not sure about this one, but did she clarify any of these in public media? No. No,
pardon?
like did she explain in any public media why she is taking that campaign?
Oh no no no. I mean
No. Okay.
it's just I'm just assuming because I mean it's not only her, you know. We've
Mm,
got like
there's a lot of people
famous
who
celebrities
make
in
seemingly.
Indonesia who would like
Mm-hmm.
take all of the endorsements they could get. Like they could be like singers, but then they promote teeth whitening like products. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah. No, I get you. Yeah.
I mean it
Um.
pays a lot. You know,
Yeah.
I get why they take that. It pays a lot of money, but
Yeah. No, and I think it lies to the concept of the freedom of choice and how genuine and how the story you want to be, right? Which is why at the very first time I was sharing about what is personal branding and what's the key. I think it's important to understand your drivers and your stories behind it and what you really want to do, right? There are people who are doing more stuffs for money. And that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it. If you're okay, or if you want to know, if you want to be known as somebody who is doing stuffs for money, and that's fine. That would obviously be in a way empowering you to to have this image that okay, well, I'm rich, I have all this money, and then I get paid for money, and that's part of my job, right? My point being is that it seems that it's everybody's choice. That's one. Whatever brand that somebody creates, it depends on the stories that the person wants to create, right? If I want to advertise to the world and I want to say, no, that's fine. I know that my value is super high. I need to get paid for every single speaking gig that I'm doing. And therefore, I'm not going to receive anybody who doesn't pay me, for example, right? Then
oh
it
yeah,
strengthens your image as that, right? Is it truly wrong? No, not exactly. It could be. I'm not saying that everything is to be very idealistic that way, right? It could be that
yeah.
it's as simple as okay, the person needs money, so therefore the person accepts more gigs that pays more money. But when it comes to image alone, it's completely to the person's choice how they want to decide it. That's one. But number
Yeah.
two that I think is very important to look at is that every coin has two different sides, right? If we do the Tolak Angin might be not exactly an international brand, like Nike, for example. That's why you were comparing because I can see where you're coming from. Tolak Angin
Oh
versus
yeah.
Nike is like
Yeah, that
Tolak.
might not be fair.
No,
Sorry,
but
but
I can understand like given that it's
oh
a
Nivea.
brand that is it's a brand that is more like a different in marketing perspective. Tolak Angin is more of a grade B, grade C, but Nike is like a grade A, grade B kind of product, right? To put it
Yeah.
very, very simply. That's why you were saying it seems like it hurts her brand. But it could be the other side. Tolak Angin is a national brand. You
That's
see,
true.
Tolak Angin is an inheritage product, right?
Yeah,
Tolak
I mean
Angin
it's
is
a
a
big deal in Indonesia. I get that.
right,
Yeah.
like
But
there. Mhm.
sorry. Oh, sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead. No, but I think
Oh
I
yeah.
think this is a very
But
interesting
the
discussion. Go
thing is
ahead.
that my my question is more is leaning more to like, how about you're not as big as Agnes Monica, you know? You've got these deals coming. For example, you're a dancer, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
then you've got these deals coming. You've got like, oh, a yoga pants, a brand wants to endorse you. Of course, you take it. You know, you wear yoga pants, but
Yeah.
again, like, I don't know, a medicine company wants to endorse you. I mean, that's kind of irrelevant. So like,
My guess.
if you're
Mhm.
broke, you know, you're like a dancer, and then you're broke. How do you decide, you know, whether you should take it or not? You know.
I think it really up to you, because at the end of the day, um, it's not necessarily that one brand will hurt you forever. I think that's one thing you need to consider. But number two, I think in Agnes Monica's case, my personal opinion is more about, I think it has a lot to do with, one, that it's a health product. Number two, it's actually very local to begin with. Remember the time when Agnes Monica was criticized heavily for, what was the case? I forgot exactly what we was saying about things about Indonesia, and then she had to clarify that I still love Indonesia, etc. There was an Instagram
Oh,
story that they right. I forgot what's the exact case, but she
I mean,
constantly clarifies that she still. Oh, the a
oh,
censored video, the edited video that constantly says that was wrongly interpreted. That she had to clarify that I'm still Indonesian. I love Indonesia, etc. Right, and I think Agnes Monica has been consistently saying, because I'm quite following her news as well, her updates as well, and I think Agnes Monica has been speaking a lot about the fact that no matter where I am, I'm still Indonesian, and
yeah, guys.
right, and that's why I think this is me, my positive, optimistic side talking, right.
Yeah.
The other side to the coin might be your perspective. Maybe she just needs more money, but the other side to this,
That's
the other
not
way to
mine.
look
That's
at
my
it,
aunt saying that, not
yeah, yeah, no,
me. Yeah.
your aunt, okay. But the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
side to this is maybe she actually sticks to the brand of being local and Indonesian.
Yeah, that's true.
It could be, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
going back to the idea of like, what's your story? What do you really want to showcase? And I think that's the first check that everybody should be asking when it comes to personal branding.
Yep. Do you have like an exact procedure or like a formula that you follow religiously?
For when I'm doing personal branding,
Yep. Or you just wing it?
no, is as in formula in general concept. So in my case, after digging for like reflecting for 10 years and after my MBA, I came to a certain very important realization, and this theme hasn't changed. If the formula that you mean is like formula for me is basically what I'm adhering to is right now is people, technology, and impact. So I feel like whatever I want to do is that at the end of the day, I want to be the person who is known for somebody who is striving and thriving and constantly pursuing the idea of things related to people, technology, and impact. And this is one of it. I'm talking about personal branding and communication. That's people related. The impact is that throughout the digital part, right? Throughout the digital part, and then the idea is that through technology, okay, well, on top of doing sort of like seminars offline, etc., I need to also engage myself with things that are related with technology, like the simplest version of it, right? The farthest it goes is that I actually have a dream to build. I often try to understand. I learn AI a little bit, not technically, but how it goes deeper and everything. The reason being is that I was wondering how we can actually replicate, for example, soft skill training, which is generally
Uh-huh.
taught by humans, but replicate in such an online system like the amazing online platform, for example, like Ruang Guru. How can we actually have Ruang Guru, but it's meant to actually do a lot more soft skills? Like Skills Academy is already happening, right? I'm also doing classes there in Skills Academy, for example, and but beyond that, like, is there a way to even do this practice part technologically? Not just like even in classes and courses, for example. That's like the things that I want to attach myself with. But
Yep.
if you take a look, the reason why I arrived in that conclusion is that I think about my story and how it came about. For instance, the reason why I bring about people, technology, impact, there's a reason for it. People wise, I came from a broken home family in which I believe communication is very important, because back then I felt that was one of the reasons why the family fell apart. And
Yep.
that's
Yep.
why
Yep.
people becomes like one of the team. Technology. Why is it very important? Because my dad often taught me about how used to teach me about Microsoft DOS, before even like Microsoft Office happens. I'm pretty sure you weren't even born, so that's why you were like, what is that?
I heard
Microsoft
of it.
DOS
Okay.
is a MS
Yeah,
DOS
yeah,
is like a very old school system, operating system, and he always taught me in advance, and he always taught me about these technologies. Like he wants me to be really upfront when it comes to technology updates. So that's why I always remember like technology is the
yeah,
next big thing. Technology is the next big thing. And my mom always teach me about the idea of social value. My mom always says like you're only useful when you're sharing your knowledge to other people. And I
yeah,
remember that dearly, even though I come from a broken home family, each of my parents bring a different positive impact to my life, and I remember that dearly. And I think that's the background story that is very important. So that's the
yeah,
first thing. Ask yourself, what's your life story and everything else, right? But eventually, it's also related to the first things that I was saying. Your process, right? Your skills, your appearance, your skills, and then your results at the end of the day. What do you really want to achieve? To me, it's very simple. So, first of all, the motivation story. If you're asking me if there's a formula, sort of, where you are coming from as a person, your
yeah,
background
yeah,
story, your tradition, your inheritance, etc., and then goes back to the end is the result that you're envisioning, right? It's about what do I want to do? Well, I was hoping that the person who was watching this right now, or the rest, or later in the recorded version, is going to feel the impact, and they're smiling, knowing that they're feeling like, hey, maybe we could do something better. Maybe I could do something better for myself because when I'm hearing Brian's stories, I'm inspired to do something else. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And that's the result that I was pursuing, the result that I was hoping to happen, and the rest, the skills part, the appearance part, the reputation part, the achievement part, the personal branding part altogether, those are the vehicles to it. But it's
yeah,
very important if there's a formula, your story, your ending, and then how you get there, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Oh, how many is that? Okay. Hold on. Let me just look at my.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so how did you So did coming from a broken home really inspired your occupation
Mm.
and all that? Because
As it turns out, there's so many people like me. In a way that not exactly like broken home per se, but I noticed, and I felt like, so here's the thing, right? First of all, when I was coming from a broken home family, I looked at other people's stories, and apparently a lot of people are also struggling with a lot of family issues, for example, right? And it's not just about household conflicts. It's not just about these domestic affairs, but it's also about, for example, some of us have to go through a lot of conflicts and fights just to choose an education track for our undergrad, right? Some of us were like, oh, I want to do this undergrad. And then I want to do this undergrad.
yeah.
And then parents want to do something else. So there's a
Oh,
conflict,
okay.
right?
So,
Does that make sense?
sorry. So did your parents want you to be what you are right now,
My
or did
background
you?
story, actually, yeah, my parents were. No, my dad was particularly insistent about me taking accounting. It's a pretty classic Chinese story.
Oh yeah,
Chinese family, doing finance, and back then, like the
yeah.
idea of CFA, certified financial analyst, was very
Okay.
popular, and therefore the idea was about like okay, doing finance and all that, right? I'll tell you a little
Yeah.
story. What did I want to do at the very first place? I wanted to do mass communication.
Mass
I
communication.
wanted to do mass
Oh,
communication.
is
Yeah,
it?
or no, the very first one was actually not mass communication. I wanted to do arts. I wanted to
Okay.
enroll for
Wait, as
Jakarta
in like
Arts
drawings
Institute.
or performing?
No, it was filming and
Oh,
performing
filming.
arts. I
Oh,
wanted
awesome.
to do. I wanted to go to Jakarta Institute of Arts, Institute Kesenian Jakarta, Jakarta Institute of Arts, and my parents were like, no, and
Yep.
then so
Yep.
my parents were like, huge no, and separate, etc., etc., and then they explained to me, right? So what I found is that what was blessing in disguise is that I went through I had the opportunity to actually talk with my parents
Yeah. Yeah.
about like why for you accounting or finance is so important. And so they were telling me the stories about like backup jobs and all that, right? And
Oh
at
yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
time, my point is that at the time, then we went through a communication process. And then I understood why they were doing that. And then so I decided to go with their choice for the first undergrad. Um, does that mean I'm wrong? No, not exactly. It just so happens with my interaction and my parents, I decided to go with their choice. Does that mean we have to go with our parents' choice all the time? No. But my point is that whatever choice that we take, it will be so much better if we go through the process of the communication. The world will be a much better place if we have
Yeah.
that conversation, that communication, and eventually reach to an understanding, and it's peaceful. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
there's so many stories that were left unresolved, right? Families who never get to actually hang out and talk about their life stories altogether and the decisions that they're making to the family, to themselves, or like
Yeah.
boyfriends and girlfriends,
Yeah, it's
um,
getting personal.
unresolved breakups, right? And then you're talking about like fights between friends who probably takes 10 years to eventually resolve. And I thought like when we talk about these conflicts, it's very, very important that communication takes play in it, right? And that's what
Yeah.
inspires me the most at the end of the day. It's about the stories that you want to bring to the table. It's about the communication. It's about genuinely connecting to people. And most importantly, understanding one another. Because
Yeah.
most of the time, because we are so busy about
Mhm.
getting the attention for ourselves, we forget that it's also about the other side, right? I
Yeah.
think I think that's what very important to remember, and that's what I truly learned from my experience.
Oh, we've got a question here.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Does bragging type work? What is the right type of bragging?
Bragging in
Bragging
the
type.
context of like when we're talking about the context of personal branding, does bragging make
Yeah, I
sense?
think
That's what the
bragging
question.
type here. Sorry for
Mm-hmm.
interrupting. I think bragging type here, as in like I actually didn't know what bragging type those two combined were, and I googled it, and it says that you're bragging an accomplishment that is not yours, that is like your friends. That happens a lot, I think.
That's yeah. That's a very
Yep.
overclaiming part, right? Like you two are working
Yeah.
on a project together, and then you're
Yeah.
basically claiming a portion that is not even yours.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I think
that
it's
no,
about
or
like for example, your best friend is a famous celebrity, and then you're
Mhm.
clinging to. Yep, it's that. Does bragging type work? I'm just reading the question. Yeah. What do you think that works?
um. So I think from your example, there's two things, right? There's the first one, different context. So when we're bragging, basically we're boasting about any achievements. Now,
Yep.
but when we're talking about any achievements, it could mean either our achievements, and then we're talking about oh, there's Sabrina. Hi, sorry, that's my friend. So anyway, so there's a part where we are bragging our achievements, and then there's a part where we are bragging different people's achievements,
Yep.
right? Like we're overclaiming a certain portion. Now, I think that the first one is the second one is definitely not exactly a good thing, right? Because you really shouldn't claim uh, part of somebody else's achievements because um, a lot of people would simply pick it up, right? A lot of people would just directly
Yep.
pick it up, and then people would tell stories and all. It's very bad. I wouldn't suggest that to be done at all. But when we're talking about our achievements, sometimes people don't even take it lightly, right? We were just sometimes there's people who are doing like the most straightforward one, like literally like, oh, yeah, this was my achievement. I earned it. I earned it so bad. Like this is, oh yeah, I'm so proud of it, etc., etc. And then
Yep.
that was just annoying. That's basically a very proud bragging. So in my class of Skill Academy, I actually shared this as well. In my personal branding class and Skill Academy, there was a session about specific types of bragging. And to put it very,
Yep.
very simply, it's basically there's a proud brag, the one that I was sharing earlier. And then there's also the idea of like humble bragging. Humble bragging is the exact opposite.
Oh, that's
Somebody
so
praised you
annoying.
for something, and then it was like, it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, it's very little achievement. It's nothing, Just
Yes.
like, no, it's nothing. Thank you so much, but it's nothing. It's like, uh,
That's how I
um,
describe Indonesians, particularly.
I was like,
Oh,
well,
I'm not fat.
a lot of
Someone's
so
like
funny,
40 kilograms. Oh, I'm not fat. Shut
a
up.
lot of a lot of Easterns do that because there's a research about this. There's a research about this that Westerns tend to be low context communication, meaning that generally they're more straightforward, and Easterns generally they're high context. There's a lot of elements embedded. You got to read about. Yeah, no, yeah, they're very subtle. You know, you got to read beyond the gestures and everything else. And mostly, proud bragging happens in the Western, and then humble bragging happens with the Eastern, right? How do you strike the balance then, right? I think striking the balance, the those types of bragging work with different types of people. The previous ones that I was describing. So what works? The right type of bragging. I think there's a term that I was suggesting in the class. I was calling it healthy bragging. But the idea of healthy bragging, in general, is about claiming the right portion. And when we're claiming the right portion, it's about acknowledging where you are right now. So, for example, most of the time, let's say in a scale of 0 to 100, most of the time we're all in the range of the 40 to 60. Actually, most of us, right? Because we're generally there's always somebody who's brighter than us or like not so better than us. So when let's say somebody is actually praising you or giving credits to you, oh, you're very good, Millsya, about this. How do you usually respond? It's like, oh, thank you very much for the compliment. You acknowledge that, but you don't have to take it over. Oh yeah, I'm very proud. I'm very happy. Or reviews it altogether by saying, no, it's just very small achievement, etc. You come up and say, thank you very much. I did try so much for it, and so I'm so very happy. There's obviously so much more that I can learn. That's one. You see the difference? It's about saying you acknowledge, and then acknowledge as well that you need to learn more as well. When that's when you accept it with gratitude and grace, right? But when you want to brag something, you want to say it, you're basically pointing out facts. For example, if you're in a group work, you want to sort of quote unquote healthily brag that you've done something, you can come up in the WhatsApp group and say, the simplest one is that, hey guys, I have done this part, but I think this part needs more rework. Any feedbacks for this one? You see what I'm saying? So instead of the humble braggers would go like, hey, I've only done this, it's very small. Or the proud brag will say, hey guys, I've already done ABC, this is a lot. Please take a look at it. I've done a lot. The healthy braggers will be like, I've done this, I think some of it needs rework. What do you guys think? You see, as simple as that, facts and then questions and then feedbacks. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
That does. Ooh, so
I noticed it's 1 minute to 8.
Yep. So yeah, we've talked to the expert today, but there would be a part 2 apparently. Thank you, Bryan.
Yes, you're very much welcome.
Yep,
so we'll get back soon, right?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. You're welcome.
Bye.
See you in the second part.
Okay. Hello.
And we're back.
Welcome
Hello.
back. Yep. So we've got heaps of questions. I'm just gonna start with number 1.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Again, for people who just tuned in, it's this talk is about self-branding, communication, and networking. And one of you asked, how does an introvert network well? Because it's hard. Because it's hard for me somehow. It says that.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question, right? When we're talking about being introvert. No, I think it's first of all, start small. That will be it, right? Because if you're an introvert, you see, there's a myth about introverts that you basically don't make many friends, but that's not because we have a very poor social skill or something as an introvert. Fun fact: I'm actually an ambivert. That means like, for the most part, I am actually a little bit introvert. Most people thought I'm pure extrovert, but I'm not. And the benchmark for introvert and extrovert isn't dependent on how much you're actually talking. So a lot of people think that introvert speaks less, extrovert talks more. But that's not exactly the case. If you take a look of your, let's say, very introvert friends, let's say those who are actually introvert by a psychological test or something, they can talk really a lot. You see what I mean? Like they can talk a lot, but the difference is that they don't talk to a very large group of people. They mostly talk in a very concentrated setting, right? A very intimate setting. You're like talking in cafes. There's maybe 2, 3 of you, not exactly 2, 3, 4, maybe very small circle. But that introvert can really talk a bunch of things. What does that mean? That means like introvert and extrovert is mostly based on the energy level that they can absorb when they're dealing with people. if they're extrovert,
Yep.
typically they gain energy from people when talking to people, when interacting with people.
Yep.
But if you are, let's say, if you are extrovert, sorry, this is the other way around. If you're an introvert, you lose energy a lot. So, for example, after this, what's going to happen is
Mentally or
that
physically.
yes, like mentally drained, like after this,
Yeah.
because I'm an ambivert, mostly after this talking, and I will be like, oh no, I'm just so tired, I'm just gonna eat in silence, and then I'm not gonna be talking to many people.
Just silence. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm drained. I'm looking like I'm super ecstatic right now. It's true, but then when I'm like off camera, it's like, oh, okay, I need to gain more energy. So that's introvert and extrovert. What does that mean? That basically means that when you are doing all these networkings, it's important to understand where you want to spend your energy with. You see what I mean? Because you have a limited energy in a way, so you want to be genuine and spend the energy accordingly to the people that you feel matters. Not exactly in the context of just social climbing, but rather, like that's one. Obviously, you might want to spend more time with the ones who you are strategically getting close to. It's the same like any when you want to approach somebody for a first date, right? It's the same thing, right? You focus your energy on that person anyway, right? Instead of spending it with somebody else. But it's not just that. It's about building that. It's about selectively picking the people, like 2 or 3 first, and then start small. I think it's an important tip to begin with. If you're an introvert, you want to do this networking. The most important thing is that you want to make sure that you start small instead of ambitiously burdening yourself with thoughts about, oh my god, but there's this extrovert, there's that extrovert. It doesn't matter. You or you, just go with it. Start small, and then you channel that, because at the end of the day, you got to believe on one thing: most introverts actually build more quality relationships than most extroverts.
Yep. So the next question. These are from the audience, okay? So it's not from me. Someone said, "How do you build like a strong first impression?" Oh, that's good.
Building a strong first impression.
Maybe they mean like in a professional level, so it's not like dating type of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it's in a professional level, I think it's important to understand that when we're talking about building a strong first impression, it's all about making sure that you are, first of all, ticking the right boxes, right? In a professional setting, when you're like, let's say, I think the most relevant example is job interview, right? If you're in a job interview, you want to make sure that you're doing the first impression. Now, the first impression is always remembering that there's 2 things that I want to share about this, right? First of all, memories are emotion based. So I was just recently undergoing. I went into a training that is talking about feedbacks and everything else. And in the session, they were discussing about memories are emotion based, meaning that most people don't even remember the words that you were saying. Most people actually remember the emotion that they experienced when they were interacting with you. That's why if you people who are calm brings you like a calm emotion, and you feel calm around the person. Like people who are very energetic, you will get that sense of energy and burst of energies in a way, you see, and that's the kind of emotion you want to experience.
Yep.
And also, the second thing that is very important is the fact that generally first impressions last in the first 30 seconds. 30 seconds, 30. Meaning that when you enter a room, or when the person first sees you, that means you're already quote unquote judged, or you're already experiencing your very first impression. Does that make sense?
Yep. It's like they're taking you in. They're taking you in.
Yes,
absorbing you.
exactly.
Yep,
So
yep.
when you ask me about how to build the right first impression, it's about like, for example, making sure that your first handshake. So it's all about the small things. But don't burden yourself too much, right? It's about making sure you're just proper from the beginning. The very first rule is that don't make things that are generally controversial. Like, for example, coming into the job interview and then yelling. So the most important is to take a deep breath and keep calm. And everything will be okay. So when you enter a job interview, the very first time you're about to enter a room, does that make sense? And then you're like about to knock on the door or something. And then you're going to be like knocking the door, taking a deep breath, and then coming. and then everything is going to be okay. And then just smile, keep calm, and smile a lot. Take a deep breath and smile. Nothing could go wrong with it.
That's true. Oh, but do you think that when you first meet someone, like, you know, in a professional level, like, it's necessary to be bold instead of trying to be just blend in, you know? What I'm saying is that sometimes people just stick to being polite and diplomatical, or you could just, you know, be yourself.
Depends on the setting, though. If you're talking
This is
about
true.
a professional setting, job interview, right? If you're, let's say, in that, right? No, I think it's important to be yourself, right? Like, for example, I like to move my hands a lot, and I've been doing that ever since, right? But there's certain, I think I think the most important thing is not about what you must do. The focus is just focusing on what you shouldn't be doing too much. For example, most people obviously shouldn't swear when they're doing a job interview, right? That those are the things that you need to be focusing. So at the end of the day, if you're talking about being yourself, then be it. So be yourself is fine. Like you wanna smile more, you wanna be a little bit more bubbly. Just it's fine. The key is to relax and then know that you have a good intention, because if you have a good intention of trying to relate to the people, then you'll be fine. For example, in job interview, I'll give you a little example. In most job interviews, people generally focus so much on trying to find the right answer to a question,
Mm-hmm.
or they are focused so much on making the right first impression, like sitting properly, and then asking, like, if I'm am I sitting properly, and then did I say the wrong words, did I what, and everything else. No, those bits don't really matter, because the interview wants to know more about you. So obviously, showing who you truly are makes sense, number one. And number two, it's also about engaging with the person. Obviously the person is sort of testing you, that I completely get, but the idea of
Yeah.
personal branding science, and then like how to actually be able to build that first impression, is also about engaging and connecting to a different level, because at the end of the day, interviewers are also human, you see. They feel comfortable if you're comfortable, they feel connected to you if you're trying to get to know the person more. So instead of just finding about, did I give the person, this person, the right answer, might as well ask, like, what am I truly interested about this person's job and about this company? So, for example, you could ask, I noticed in your website that you were talking about this. How big is the value implementation in the company? I want to know. Like, I noticed about this. Is it good? Is it bad? Or like, so you talk and you understand more about the company and the interviewer, rather than focusing on ourselves, whether we give the right answer or the wrong answer. We share the energy. We talk like two normal human person, because that's the whole point. At the end of the day, interviewer wants to know your daily self, right? Not
Yep.
like your super upgrade self that only lasts for like a day.
Yep. Yep. That's true.
Exactly. And it's also about matchmaking. That's why there's a lot of employees who aren't happy, because they were putting so much expectation to their companies. They don't see how the daily looks like. And at the same time, they were portraying a lot of expectations on the interview day, but they're not displaying their true self. At the end of the day, it's like you're supposed to be, and you're supposed to be comfortable with the company that you're coming into, right?
Yep. Do you believe in fake it till you make it, though? The phrase "fake it till you make it."
In
Do you
general,
believe in
yes.
that? But
Yeah,
that's more
because
of like in skills, isn't it? It's more of like you're saying that. Oh yeah, I can do, you know, I can do the handstand, but when you get the job, you can't do it.
yeah, in general,
Yeah.
the reason why I was believing in that quote is because it's similar with practice makes perfect, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think I think the idea of fake it till you make it, as long as you're trying to direct it to a more positive sense, helps in that way, in the sense of practice makes perfect. So you were giving me an example of handstand, which is obviously it's kind of rhetorical when we put it that way, right? When we were doing it that way, it's kind of like, yeah, of course you got to fake, like how you can do the fake handstand thing, and then you try it, and then you try it, and then you try it. It's slightly different, but the reason why I said why I still believe in the idea of fake it till you make it is because when we're talking about, for example, right, smiling, it's the one of the
Smiling.
simplest. When you want to do networking, sometimes you feel that your smile isn't exactly the best smile. And a lot of people were telling you that this is like the good smile and everything. And you feel like, okay, if I can smile that way, that's fine, but I can't do it all time, right? It feels like so not me. But sometimes you gotta
Yeah.
find what's right and what's wrong for you, and until you actually try it, you will know whether it's right. Does that make sense? So you kind of have to understand that, okay, well, let's try it first, then I'll understand if it suits me or it doesn't suit me. So hence comes the idea of fake it till you make it. That's
Yep.
when you will be
Exactly.
smiling with the way, okay, I'm gonna try to find the right smile for me. Is
Oh,
it
how
this?
do you
Is it
deal with
that? Is it that? You know? So
yeah,
that's way it makes sense.
that's how I live by right now. It's got how do you deal with other people who have different communication style? As in, some people are dominating study and etc. Yep.
In what
How
sense?
do
Can
you
you
deal
repeat
with
the question a little bit?
how do you deal with other people who have different communication style?
Uh,
Some people are dominating study and etc.
mm. This is where, let's say, if somebody is different communication style is about to understand, take a pause. That's the first thing. When you're dealing with somebody different, first of all, take a pause. You sit down, you observe the person, and then you try to truly understand the person's first. Here's the thing, right? For example, have you heard about there's just a proverb that says that if you want to break a rock, you don't just slam it to the ground, you erode it with water. So there's a scientific theory that actually proves that stones or rocks can be eroded with droplets of water. And this is where, let's say, if you're dealing with somebody dominant, the answer is not about dominating them again. No, that's not the right answer. Because most of the time, dominant people just needs acknowledgement. They want to be heard. Most people has a certain reason or motivation why they are behaving that way. They have a certain story. Like, for example, you probably have heard about stories about people who are just very grumpy and then constantly refuses people's attention. And most of the time, if you dig in, there's a lot of stories about how the person has been hurt so much. And if you've watched, there was a movie up about a very grumpy grandpa, and there was a story that the grandpa was actually, it was very sad. Essentially, the background story was that the grandpa had issues in the past because he had a lot of broken promises in the past. Let's just put it that way. It's kind of more fun if you've watched it than if you
Yeah,
haven't
you
watched
want me
it.
to
Then
watch it?
yeah, no, I think you should. It's a cartoon, but it's very nice.
Is
And
it
then
up?
it's up. Yeah,
No.
I was
Oh, it's up.
didn't I
Oh,
say
yeah,
it's up?
sorry.
It's
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
up. You've watched
yeah,
you've watched it.
Obviously, yeah, yep,
Yeah, it's very good, right? So the story of Up is that now there's a reason, there's a story behind everybody. Now I think when you ask me like how do you deal with somebody different, is that the first of all to understand why they are
yeah,
acting as such, not like why they are different. Rather, okay, why a person behaves the way they're behaving. There must be
yep,
something. There must be a driver. There must be a story, and sometimes it's all about trying to understand them better. Now, I'm talking about the very first time we're trying to deal with somebody, right? Because most of us we sometimes are having this first impression. The first impression is bad, so try to understand the motivation and what's driving the person to behave as such. And I think that would help a great deal because for the most part, it's just the way people are communicating that is wrong for the most part. And if you've pushed a little bit further and tried to understand further, it's about it's the same motivation but different ways of doing it. That's why it's clashing. Does that make
yep,
sense?
yep, yep, yep,
Yeah. So I think it's important. But obviously, it takes two to tango. I think that's also important to note, right? At the end of the day, like you want to listen to somebody, but the other person just doesn't want to share her or his or her life and doesn't want to open up. And that's very hard. You kind of have to try to make sure you're trying pushing, but at the end, you also need to know when to kind of stop, if that makes sense.
yep. So like
Yep.
you talked about facing someone different and then getting to know them. By any chance you've watched the movie The Devil Wears Prada? Have you watched that movie?
I think I did, but actually, honestly, I kind of forget how it ended or like the exact
So
story.
it's
What's
basically
with it?
about like this like powerful lady called Miranda Priestley, and she just rules the fashion world. Like she's on top of her game, and she's the boss,
Mm.
and everyone's horrified of her. And like, how do you deal with a person like that as a subordinate? Like, I mean, you said that you have to get to know someone like that, right? And I mean, at one point, if I'm like her assistant or something, she's been where I am at, you know. Why can't she understand that? It's horrifying to deal with. I mean, dude, she's vicious. I mean, you need to watch the movie again. She's
Yeah, I
vicious, and
remember now. Hmm.
yeah. Some people say that, oh yeah, she works hard to get there, but at the same time, like she's been where we're at, you know, at the bottom. So, are you just pushing us, or because she's not necessarily like she's really mean. She's not like strict, purely strict. She's a really mean, and sometimes it's unnecessarily mean. And I know that there are heaps of bosses who are like that in real life.
Mm.
So yeah,
Mm.
what I just want to know, what do you think about
How,
bosses?
how would I deal with that kind of situation?
I mean, like, what do you think about like lead? See,
Leaders,
I can't even say that
leaders who
she's a
are.
leader because she's more of a boss than a leader. You know,
Mm.
like
Mm.
if with leaders, you're not really afraid of them. You respect them, but you have the courage to at least say, "Oh, I disagree."
Yeah,
But with
yeah.
the Miranda lady, you know, you can't.
No, I
So,
think that's
what do
a
you think
very
about
fair
it?
question. I think first of all, I think I think it's helpful to know that there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of different ways that somebody can click with the way we communicate, right? And or the reason why somebody can trust somebody. Like for
Yep,
example, it could be that people who are mean have different motivations, a variety of reasons. It could be
yep,
the person is pushing on us and making sure that we can grow under adverse situation, under difficult situations, or it could be that the person is just generally mean and wants a perfect standard. That's the other
yep, yep.
extreme to it. And so the way to communicate with the person is to build the trust of the person first. That's number one,
Oh yeah, yep, yep.
right? Because generally, once you're trusted by the person, then generally the person wants to actually appreciate you more and respect you more. Most likely, maybe the person thinks like, I am trying to find somebody who is more equal, like me, who used to be like in a very adverse situations. I
Yep.
grew up in a very difficult situation. I also has a very difficult boss, but then I grew up to become who I am today, etc., etc. So somebody who I can trust will be able to understand that. That's just a thought of the boss, or the leader, or whatever you wanna call it. But it's important to understand the driver of this particular person or leader before we eventually can judge the person, like how terrible the person is, for example. But it takes a lot of great deal of courage to go there and then actually try to understand that, right? Because it's like a jungle of challenges. So it's also important to, second tip, pick your battles. Sometimes today might just be not the right day to approach the person because it's taking so much
Yeah,
of your energy. Sometimes that
yeah,
day just simply means that you get to, you know what, I'm just going to drop the sword. I'm not going to pick a fight, or like I'm not going to even listen to that. I'm just going to be like doing my day uh, goes by, and I want to rest a little bit, or I want to pick a different battle instead, and I get to live to another day, and then I'll fight and I go with that battle to another day. And I think that's important because you can't win every day, but you got to recognize there's a bad day, sometimes there's a good day, and then you pick your battles.
yep. Are we running out of time? Okay. Oh, we've got. I think we've got time for one more question.
Hmm.
So, is it possible to change our old ways in, building a personal brand, like with the social media era and all, like, and yep, that's the
I
question.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to everything about the whole theme about self branding, about communication, about networking, right? Is it possible to change it entirely? And I do think so. So um, it's about making sure that you are okay. Let me take a step back. So first question, right? Is it possible? Yes. And how do you do that? Using all the communication and the networking possible. And also, but I noticed there was a question about that was going through in the flow of the conversation, how to make people trust that we can do things. It's similar. The key here at the
Okay.
end of the day, it's about consistency. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense? Because one of the oldest proverb of all time, Rome wasn't built in a day. So it
Yep.
means that it takes building blocks by building blocks to go through. Because at the end of the day, it's not just one particular fame that makes you who you are right now, right? It doesn't happen in an instant. It takes like building days by days of consistency to make sure that at the end of the day, you're people know you for it. People truly understand who you are, because sometimes people misinterpret us first impression, and then people hate you for the next thing you know. And then you need
Yep.
to push through and you need to try to communicate. So network, understand more people, communicate what you really truly want to happen. And if you're changing your old self to a new self, then communicate to people and tell them that, hey, I am changing. I used to be like this, but I want to be a different person. And maybe there's feedbacks, and maybe there's something you can help me with. This is what I'm trying to do. You need to tell people that, even the part where you want to change yourself. So, and the reason
Yep.
why is this: number one, people understand what's going on. And number two is that people can hold you accountable for it. And that's helpful, because people can remind you, right? You make a promise about this. You told me you want to do this. Then you should. Why don't you try to do that? And then you get constantly reminded. But I think the most important is that you just got to put yourself out there. To close very quickly, because I'm aware it's also about time, right? It's
Oh yeah.
about, when you're talking about self branding, communication, networking, it's about consistently throwing yourself out there. It's about
Yep.
consistently practicing, and that's the toughest battle,
Yep.
because
Agreed.
going out
Agreed.
there and being super consistent is the toughest battle at all times. So that's why you need your support system. You need somebody who supports you as well. There's no way you can do this alone. And I think that's what matters at the end of the day when you talk about communication, networking, branding. Consistency is the final keyword.
Yep. I mean, like, it's, easier said than done, but you're so right. So yeah, we're running out of time. Oh, we ran out actually. Thank you, Bryan. You're
You're
really
very welcome. Thank you
awesome.
so much as well.
Yeah.
It's been great talking and chatting
Great
here
talk. So
tonight.
thank you for those who tuned in, and I guess bye. Thank you, Bryan.
All right, thank you. Bye bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so much for watching.